Welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be the last video tutorial about Blender 279 because Blender 2.8 solid release is just around the corner. It has been speculated to be released at the end of July, so therefore I'm preparing my entire new materials and new tutorials for Blender 2.8. This is the season finale, we can say, for Blender 279, I wanted to close this entire chapter for those of you who are going to be still using 279 either for a pipeline workflow point of view or because of hardware limitations. If you're here, thank you very much. Come to this video and to use your previous knowledge from other 3D packages and turn it into Blender. But one of the most asked questions that I get as a trainer is how do I get individual passes like on V-Ray? If I, for example, would like to have an instant depth pass, how do I do that? If I want to have a only shadows pass, how do I do that? How do I create that kind of thing? Well, here on Blender 279, fortunately this has been fixed on Blender 2.8, but on Blender 279 you have different render layers right here on the properties areas, and if you come here, then we can see you can create new layers by using this button or delete layers using this button. Since Blender does not have a system where it can be used using numbers per layers or a drop down list per layer, Blender decided just to create 20 empty slots. I want you to get this idea first on this first 5 minutes of the video because it's very important for you to manage how you're going to be manipulating your render layers and then your isolating objects and also your render passes. And we want to talk about that more in a minute. So let's get into it. There are 20 slots, 20 squares that are representing your scene. And this is the way you're going to be imagining this. I'm going to blank this out totally by clicking here, which is the first square. So Blender, the way it numbers this is by starting on the left with this square as layer number 1. Layer number 2 follows, layer number 3, 4, 5. Then you do not come here, no. You continue on to the next slot, render layer number 6 or slot number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you come back here, 11 right under 1, 12 right under 2, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and layer number 20. I want you to focus just on this area for now. We will cover all of these other areas, but by now you should have a pretty clear idea of what this represents. Okay, this is the way Blender has chosen to create its layers in general. Wherever you are going to see these 20 empty boxes, it represents some sort of alignment or some sort of organization for your many different objects or elements. So if we click here, we're really activating or making visible layer number 2 for the entire 3D scene, which is also reflected down here. So how do I know when objects exist and when objects do not exist? This is a blank slot. So if I click here, I obviously will not see anything. But if I click right here, this tells me that this layer number 5, remember, you start counting from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Layer number 5 on the 3D scene, 3D world, has this tent. Then I remember that layer number 1 has a character. So if I press shift, I will have my character, shift, and then click number 5. I will have both of my elements, and this will be reflected right here, only right here, because this is a representation for your entire 3D scene. Layers, render layers, which can be named, and also they can have different properties like isolating things, excluding things, or masking things. This is like a punch out sort of idea there. So like I mentioned, whenever you see this area, you're going to be seeing layers. Okay, just imagine you have an imaginary number 1 here, number 2 here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They could have created easily a drop-down menu. They could have easily created an empty cell filling out of filling cell kind of system, but they did not do that. They chose this method, and therefore, whenever you see this kind of organization, you will instantly think, okay, this is talking about layers. They just wanted to use 20 blank slot spaces so I can fill them in. So perfect. Let's go here. And now I want to see the world. Where is the world? How do I know where is the world? Well, I still have this layer here and this layer over here empty. Let's find out what's in here. So if I click here, I see only a light, so that's not important. What about here? Okay. So now I know that my world exists on layer number 6. So again, if I see this layer which I have created, for example, I press this plus button and then I can rename this. I'm going to be using the word my selected character. Okay, so where was our character? Our character was living inside layer number 1. So if I activate that, I can see that reflected here. See, layer 1, this orangey yellow dot, and then first slot activated. Second slot activated. Fifth slot activated. Sixth slot activated. Okay, just this is seen. Don't go over here, don't get confused. All right, perfect. So let's work with this one. I know layer number 1, it's being named my selected character. It's represented here, but then I need to know how do I use this option right here. Why is it telling me that I would like this layer also to be rendered? Okay, this is the reason why. Because in the viewport, you have the physical representation of your character. But let's say that on my selected character, you want to see your isolated character on viewport, but you need the environment to be rendered at render time. So that's why layer comes in. Okay, yes, I know it's kind of confused, but just follow along. You'll get it in a minute. So I know my environment is on layer number 6. All right here. So where's layer number 6? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so if I click here, I will not see it on my viewport because I am not using my scene tabs, or rather my scene spaces or slots. I'm using my render layer slots. Therefore, whatever is sitting in this layer, okay, it's going to be represented on this layer at render time. Alright, that's nothing difficult. But if you notice, I don't have a check mark here. So therefore, whatever I do, you always need to do a check mark so that this render layer will be taken into acquaintance when the rendering starts. Okay, so I just want to deactivate this because I'm not going to be working on this. Okay, so now you get the basic idea why you exit with layer. Because if you want to create an entire CG Amazon River scene, you're not gonna have the mountains, you're not gonna have the vegetation or the animals walking around if you don't really need to see them on the viewport because you already have created them, and also you have separated them on a different layer so you can have isolated animations here and there. But you know that your entire forest exists on that number 6 layer, which is this one. Let's pretend for a second that this is a forest. So all those little animals and all those trees are going to be rendered directly by selecting this slot right here. You see, it's selected number 6. It's selected number 6. Okay, I don't want to press render right now, but you trust me, it will render this one and also this one in the same picture. Don't forget, this is only for reflecting, or rather showing you what are you doing here. Okay, so I'm just going to mark this one. You see already it's unchecked because I only want to render the selected character. Perfect. So let's move on. And now you can see how this thing works by using also the exclude and also the mask layer. So how do I use exclude? Let's say I want to render something. I don't know, maybe let me switch. Okay, exclude here, the shadow. This contains the tent, right? And number 1 contains the character. Now I have selected my shadow for the character only. Therefore, I want to exclude the tint, which is on number 5, on slot number 5. Therefore, on the shadow, I only tell it, okay, I want you to render this, but please exclude the shadows, or exclude, rather, do not render anything that is on slot number 5, which is in this case the tint. So even if the character is laying against the tint, I will not see a shadow. That's why I need to exclude the shadow, okay, from the tint. It will only render for this layer because it's the only thing that is selected. Also, since I have another element which is the park, I don't want to render every single shadow that the park is casting onto anything or onto anywhere. I don't want that. So please exclude all the shadows from layer number 5, which contain the tint, and please exclude all layers that are coming from the rest of the theme park on layer number 6. Layer number 5, layer number 6, layer number 5, pick, layer number 6, pick. And what I do want to render is just whatever it is on on layer number 1. Therefore, I have render number 1. So you can already see that this directly associates with exclude, the layer and the exclude. Then why do they have to place this over here? Because they imagine that you somehow will do someday this kind of thing, that you will use your entire user interface and you will work without the need to go back into a viewport to work your scenes. Therefore, they placed this here conveniently. But if you have this scenario where your viewport is right here displaying your layers, also you're going to be seeing a redundant GUI space being used again. Don't worry about that. We know that Blender 279 is about redundancies, but here you are to learn how to use that to your advantage. Fantastic. So let's go into the mask layer. Why do we want to mask things? Let me see if I have any layer created for a mask layer. I don't think I did create. Okay, here's one. So background all objects. So by now you should imagine that every object that is right here and number 5 layer, number 6 layer contain everything that is for the background. Okay, for the background renders, everything is contained on layer number 5 on layer number 6. But for me specifically, I did not want my main character to be created the same way the renders were used for the backgrounds, because I don't need any, for example, lines or any strong colors to go onto the background. I just want the background to go all out flat in a one single layer render. But I want to exclude, I don't want my character to appear on them. I want to punch, somehow cut, somehow make a holdout shape for transparency on the entire background using the silhouette of my character. And that's when I use the mask layer. Therefore, I'm going to tell it, please exclude my character from layer number 1 and also punch it out. Make a transparency using this shape. Whatever exists on layer number 1, please exclude it, punch it out, cut it out, make a transparency. And also please exclude everything that is on the tent. I don't want the tent. Don't render the tent. I only want the environment, which is this one on layer number 6, this one right here. See the environment being rendered. But on this environment, please punch out a mask. Punch out, make a hole, okay, for the character that is existing on layer number 1. Remember, these are number slots on your mind. This is slot number 1, slot number 2, slot number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay? In the same way here, layer number 1, active, number 2, active, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Why did I choose to separate it from 5 units to 5 units? I don't know. This is just a design choice. I don't know why they did it this way, but this is why you see this everything being complex. But I certainly hope that you, on this video, are getting a pretty good idea on how to handle this, because this is crucial to get the next step, which is to render this out isolatedly. So let's say, for example, I want only to create a rim character render. That means I only need my character to be rendered, okay, with a rim light. You can see it right here, with a rim light around her. So let me do something. I'm going to switch all of these render layers off so you can immediately see the result. So what I did here was to select layer number 1 to be rendered. I do not want to be rendering the background objects, which is the tent and the environment, the rest of the theme park. What I want to do is just render this one, okay, namely this one. But here comes the fun part. I did create a material which I call top rim light. Therefore, this one is called rim character to be rendered in layer 1, and I have a general scene override material called top rim light. Alright? So how does that material look like? Pretty easy. Let me box select them. Here they are. Every sphere that you see here has been assigned with a different material. And therefore, I have this material available on my library. In this case, I'm going to be using the top rim light material. Guess which one is it? This one. Alright? So if you want to see the shader, this is how that shader looks like. It's a custom rim shading with some custom values that I did create, okay, to override the scene light and just create a hard line atop like this. Or you can now see the potential. I hope you realize the potential now. On every render layer, you can have a general override material. And this is the workaround for you to use your previous 3D render knowledge using different passes, so that you will translate that into Blender using material overrides for your entire scene. So in this case, if you're using a object ID material for the entire scene, yes, you can create a material for that. Let's say if you want a depth path directly from the material override, then you can create it. So yes, I know it sounds impossible, but it does. It really does. And I'm going to be putting this as an asset to be later acquired for rendering on Blender. So in our example, we have the ring character layer selected, and also we have the entire scene overridden by this material. Previously, I've mentioned that it doesn't matter if you're seeing it on the scene, you can also see it in case it's checked here. But in this case, this one represents whatever it's activated on the scene. So therefore, it has to match with this. Basically this, and this could match in the case that you have already organized your elements individually on each of those layers. Fantastic. So here we go. I'm going to press F12, and this time we're going to see the character being rendered with this override material, which is the top rim light. And as you can see, you're getting it there. And this kind of passes, you're not going to get it anywhere unless you create the material. And therefore, I'm going to be using that on the composite side of things. So let's just finish this render. Let it take the time it takes to render. Okay, it's about to finish. 99%, 100%. Now you can see it right there. Why do we have the other color render? Because here the new render layer that we created didn't have any kind of a specific information. As a matter of fact, it had every layer selected to be rendered. So let's just delete this, because right now we don't need it. in our example, we created this layer by using this plus button. Then we selected our scene number 1 layer and then layer number 1. This both match. I can see them on the viewport, and when I press render, I'm going to get this result because this entire scene is getting overwritten by this top rim light material. Alright? Fantastic. So you can see it right there. Perfect. So let's create, or rather, let's watch another one. Let's try normals. Yeah, but what is different about the normals that we already have right here on passes? You can see it right there. We have a normal pass, so why don't we just check it and then just go home? No, well, these normals are normals created to react on the local object coordinates. And it might be the case that you will want to create a normalized object coordinates, or just regular normal paths if you're going to be using it on Blender. But in case that you want to export whatever you're doing, the other software will not understand this unnormalized normal path. Okay, so you do need to create a specific normal that is going to be read over to Nuke, over to After Effects, over Natron, over any other compositing software that you're using. You're going to need a normalized object world path, if you a normalized object path or world path. On either case, Blender has its own method to interpret this inside the Blender compositor. But since we're talking about that you will like to export this without the complications by porting your renders onto another software which will not be able to interpret correctly that kind of render, then we want to take that extra step and set up that normal path. And I'm going to be showing it to you right here. I think it was, where was it? There they are. This kind of normal, it's the kind of normal that it's to be understood outside Blender. And now this one is just a simple gradient because this is the way I would like to do it. This is my hair shader specifically for reactions to lights and camera coordinates. It's works fantastic. And this is our object ID path, and this is just a special setup for Blender's freestyle setup, which I also created around here. You can see it right there. No. Normal, ramp, override, hair material, object ID path, background. Well, I guess I did not use this material, but this material was created so that we can override the freestyle render. So let's try another one. With that set in mind, let's activate all the passes that we are going to be using. So I'm going to be checking all of these because this is what I needed. 10 fireworks, I'm not going to be rendering that. The color flat, yes, the color flat version is just a flat shading method. I think it's right here, flat shading. And shadows, yes, the shadows, we're going to, the normals we talked about. So every time you create one pass, render layer pass, second step is to select which things are going to be appearing on the render, which ones are going to be excluding on the render, and which ones you would like to max them out or punch a hole through. Okay, and last but not least, the override material for the entire layer, because after all, if you don't have a path like a velocity path or a depth path, then you can create a material, yes, a material for a depth. Fantastic, huh? Blender is amazing. Then you can overwrite that and you will directly get it from the render options that you have right here. Now, let's go and talk about the compositor. I'm going to be maximizing this because this entire view is for the compositor. I go Shift A and then I go and use Render Layers. On Render Layers node, you will notice I have different options to feed directly our viewer with these connections, just like any regular compositor. But there is something neat that I want you to notice, and it's down here. First, you have these options to search through your different scenes if you're creating a merge of all of your other scenes. But if you already did created a render, then you can drop down this list and jump directly to the render layer that you created outside. Where is this list feeding from? It's feeding from your list out here. So this is the full cycle. Number one, create, with this button, create your render layer. Number two, select which scene element you would like to render. Number three, in case you would like to override the entire scene colors and materials, then you can create a separate ball or sphere, assign a material, and then use that material to override the entire rendered scene, which you have created right here. Okay, in my case, I'm going to be working with this color flat. Okay, and the color flat doesn't have anything, it's just the render without any kind of shadows or without any kind of thing. So the only thing that you were gonna have here is just color, because if I use direct plus indirect plus color, then I'm going to get extra spaces here, and also I'm going to get calculations for the light bounces. I don't want that. I just want a flat plain color. And therefore, I only have selected on diffuse the color. We're going to press render color, flat colors, the shadows, the normals, the rim, the ramp up and down, the override hair material. Okay, this one I do not want. An object ID material and background all objects. Let's go. Fire off. F12. Okay, what? Oh, again, I forgot to activate this. This is going to be right here, and this is going to be matching right there. Okay, finally. F12, and then we're going to see the first thing is going to render is this layer, which is called color flat. Okay, that's it. I'm not getting any shadows. I am getting some ambient occlusion. That is because I did not uncheck. Oh, I did uncheck ambient occlusion. But if you had this checked, then you would get ambient occlusion down here, and you do not want that. You want the environment light to be cast out on her and affect her, and also use the different surfaces. Now it's rendering number two layer, which is in this case shadow. Fantastic. You see it right there. Now guess what the third layer is going to be rendering? The third layer is going to be rendering the normal object world normals coordinates. The normalized world coordinates. Now the rim the upper rim, the one that we were previously showing, and then the ramp up and down, what it's going to be doing is getting a gradient from the lightest part onto the darkest part on any element that it's got. This way we're going to separate clearly some elements at the compositing time. Okay, this is desired. The override hair material, which is a gloss, we're not going to be rendering, but that we are going to be using the object ID path. Yes, you can create a shader that actually does this, so you can have isolated masks for you to work on isolating elements. You can also work with Cryptomatte, but I'm not going to be boring that subject onto this video. We can do that later. So the background all objects, since we unchecked those scenes, if you remember, it's not rendering anything. But let's not worry. We know that it's here on this background, and this one also, and also here, and also there. So since I already rendered all others, I'm going to be unchecking them, and then I'm going to press again render. Alright, let's go. There we have it again, reflecting on the viewport and then reflecting on the layer. This is rendering perfectly. And let's talk about the render layer nodes. Okay, render layer nodes. So everything you write here, you're going to be seeing it reflected right here. This feeds this list. Therefore, if you want to use the render layer, which is called color flat, you can come here and then select, guess what? Color flat. Marvelous. Since it's finishing rendering, once it's finished render, you will see the result right here. But right now, this render layer will contain only this information. And this is how you separate this from this. This is how you feed from here, through here, all the way over the compositor. So there you have it. The color flat layer, it's represented now right here, and then you get the preview. If you want to see the normal layer, the normal render layer, it's right there. Fantastic. What about the shadow? If you select the shadow, then that's how we're going to be working on. Okay? If you want to render this, because somehow you lose this thumbnail, because right now this is stored at a temporary directory, and it will not be saved unless you save the real image. This is just a temporary image. This has been also fixed on Blender 2.8. So I don't know. Let's check them out. They are all according to what we wanted. So let's say that we already rendered everything, and we have already created for each of these layers list each render node. So I have this render layer. Okay, color flat. Let me maximize this. Oh, sorry. Let me maximize this. All right, fantastic. Press N, I get the properties. So this properties right here, it's right there, the node, the name, render layer 001. That's how it's called. You can also label this, and then I'm going to label it color flat. Color flat. Perfect. So now, oops, I'm sorry. Color flat. See? This was called previously render layer, but now I know this is called color flat because I just name it, pressing N, you get the properties, and then you rename that. But in case you don't want to rename, like in my case, okay, you just leave that with render layers, which takes the name right from up here. And then you grab this image port, and then you want to pipe it onto a file output node. Why do you want to do that? Because I want every layer that I created separately. I want to, let me delete these, and I guess that's it. Every separated layer that you did create, you want to now join it again to compose a single EXR multi-layer file. Why? Because in the compositor, it's probably your desire to send everything for the compositor in one single layer per frame. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't want that. So in background all objects, I guess they were turned off. Alright, I'm not gonna bother on this one. So let me cut this out. For a minute, just imagine that you already finished your entire render animation, and each one frames of your animation is divided onto different sections with the override materials. Now you can see the potential in this because at compositing time, you can select how much blending you want between each other of the layers or isolate elements. This is good. Now you want this into a one single EXR zine. How do you do that? You press Shift A and then you write File Output. Why? Because you want to write the result of your entire different render layers into one EXR. So how do we change the properties of this? Pretty easy. You press N again, and then you are gonna get. Let me just get this out of the way. The file output node. Okay, Shift A, file output, search, file output. There you have it. Can be configured by touching it and then coming to the properties. Here in the properties, I'm going to be selecting where I want this file to be written. In my case, I don't want it to be PNG. I wanted this to be a multi-EXR, multi-layer image file. So I switch that, and the first port I'm going to be getting there, it's named the image. No, I want this to be named flat color. Flat color. This is the name that it's going to be receiving when we port it over to the multi-compositor, say Natron or Nuke or After Effects. This name is the one that is going to be recognized. Okay, so again, open EXR, and we have the PNG sequence. No, we don't want PNG. This is EXR. Fantastic. EXR. So there we see the extension, and now let's plug these things in. So the first thing we created, it's a flat color port for input, and this is going to go output, input, flat color. So surely the first thing that I'm going to be seeing in my multi-EXR layer is going to be this girl, or rather this image, flat color image. Now this one, I know it's from my normal path, so evidently I will create a new input, click here, and then it's going to be called normalized object coordinates. Normalized object path. I want to use the word path. So again, I select the output port image in this case, and then I plug it into the input port for this one. So my EXR now has two layers, which will be representing my flat colors and my normalized world path. Next, I have this ramp up and down, so I'm going to be adding a new input, and then I'm going to be using ramp up, down. That's the name I'm going to be using. Now, of course, you know where all this goes. Next one, just shadow. I'm going to be doing this pretty quickly. Shadow. And then drag and plug. Perfect. Now, object ID. Again, I select my node. Add input. Object ID. Perfect. Connected. Fantastic. Oh no, did not connect. Connected. Perfect. And then I'm going to select this one and then rim up. Rim up. I can tweak the shader to create a sideways rim or a low below rim. But in my case, I wanted to create a rim from the up coordinates. Alright, so that's it. Now you have the file output, you have these different passes, render. So now you want to mix them all into one single EXR sequence. So where do you press to render it out? Because right now it's not rendered out. So don't worry. These are living passes, which means that they are active. They have not stopped their functions. They are still active. With this in mind, you can render. Now let me reduce this. With this in mind, you can now press render animation right here on the viewport, render animation, and it will render all of the subsequent frames, and every one frame is going to be written on this file output node with its corresponding frame number. You can see right there the padding with its corresponding frame number. But since we're going to only use one frame, I'm going to be pressing this button, render the active scene. Now it's going to be rendering again, except this time all of these render layers are going to be writing onto the file output node onto this location. Now let's check out that location to see how it looks on the Explorer. Let's go to the Explorer, and surely enough, we have an EXR file being written. So since we are only writing a few layers, we can see them right here. Okay, the object ID path has not been rendered yet. The color flat, it's right there, but obviously it's rendering the other one, so let's just wait. Okay, I think it's done there. And as you can see, it's pretty fast. Now that's the one thing that I really like about working with this system, that it does not require that much time to calculate anything, because since you're rendering flat colors, cycles will not delay the operations to render because it's not calculating any bounces. Okay, so I'm getting just plain colors straight out from the textures. I'm going to be talking about color management also in another video, which will be subsequent to this one, if it gets enough views. But for now, I'm just setting this all up because I really want to put across the power of the overrides for any system on before Blender 2.8. This is a 2.7 series. So it finished rendering. Now let's check out which ones have rendered. That's a normal view. That's the color flat, the one we saw. The shadows, perfect. Rim, magnificent. The ramp up and down, stair. The object ID path, fabulous. And obviously the background all objects, which were already turned off. And I forgot about to turn that on. Anyways, so let's go over to our renders. And the frame that we render, it's frame, let's see, it's supposed to be right here somewhere. So it's render frame number 1151. That's the one that we're going to be using, 151. So either from these two, let's organize them by dates. Date, which one is the most recent one? This one, the 4 a.m. one. So this one goes down and this one goes down. Perfect. Get out. So now we're going to use this one, and we're going to use Natron to do the compositing. So I'm going to drag and drop this file onto Natron, which is a open source compositor, just like Blender. Drag and drop. It's going to read the files. It's going to read the render layers. And we are going to get them identified right here. Where are they going to be identified? Well, if you come up here, you're going to see every layer name that you have just created. For example, the normalized object path. Okay, boop. Then you can see it right there. Fantastic. And you're seeing it not as a information for that path. You're actually seeing as a colored version on RGBA, which is what you're seeing right here. Okay, so the object ID, you have it right there. The rim up, you have it right there. The shadow, you're having it right there. And these are other render layers that we did not create, but it's, you know, the standard layering method for an EXR file. So what else? Yeah, the flat color. So let's say now that we're going to start the compositing part here on Natron. Here's how you do it. You need to read, or rather extract, the channel information from that render, from that multi-layer EXR file. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to work that way instead of working as each individual files from the render blender? Because it will be very easy if each of those outputs would have its own individual render file, render output file, right? It will be very easy if I would just create one for the flat path, one for the normal, one file output for the ramp, one file output for the shadow. Okay, it would be very easy. But then what would you do with the entire sequence, or the entire scenes, or the different elements that you're going to be rendering as a separate path? It will be a mayhem. Of course, you want to keep your EXR files short in weight, but this is my recommended method of working whenever you're handling small animations. Okay, not big ones, because those require more breaking down for the elements. Okay, let's not delay this. So the way you extract, the way you read inside that EXR multi-layer file, it's by using the shuffle node. Okay, shuffle node, which basically means extract the information from this channel. Okay, and you have two inputs, because basically the shuffle node is going to have something merge with another thing. But in my case, I just want to pipe this through the A which is the foreground. B stands for background, so the foreground. And then I'm going to press 1 by selecting the shuffle node. And then we lose our image because the shuffle node doesn't know what to read. It has 7 different, or I'm sorry, 5, I'm sorry, how many? It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 6 different layers, and he doesn't know what to read. So if you press Ctrl and click shuffle, you're gonna get a floating window like mine. And then this output layer, which is the one that you're going to be reading, it's the one that it's going to be showing. I'm sorry. Here on RGB channels, if you select here, you're gonna get a list of the entire things. So each of the files, each of the 6 files that you just saw, are going to get displayed as R, G, B, and alpha channels. So for each image, you have 6 different slots where you can still store many other different options like ambient occlusion or reflectivity or any other monochromatic channel information. But we are not interested in that. We're interested on going into the flat color. So I'm going to select for R, flat color R, and it will automatically fill the other slots, the other slot channels. So green one for the flat color will be green one, and the blue one for the flat color will be the blue one. So it will do that automatically, and it will also fill out the alpha flat color. So right now I have the flat color, marvelous. But let's say also let's rename this. This is shuffle. This is shuffle flat. Perfect. So we can identify that. Now I want to copy this. Copy and then paste. And here again, I'm going to choose the A channel foreground, and then I'm going to select this one again. Then I'm going to press 1, and then I'm going to go back in that. And since it's a copy, it already knows that I'm going to be using the flat color. So let's just send that away. Let's unplug the viewer. Let's create a shuffle, which was the recent one used. Foreground, connection. He doesn't know, okay, because this one is new. Control click, left click, by the way. And then I'm going to tell this guy, please use the shadow color right here. Okay? Shadow R, shadow G, shadow B. Perfect. And this is going to be called shuffle shadow. Right? Perfect. Now something is wrong because I do not see shadow. Oh, there it is. It was a refreshing thing. Okay, so shadow. Right now, I did select the shuffle, and then I chose shadow R, and then it will automatically populate the other channels for G and B and A. Now remember, this is just a monochromatic channel, but in actual real life, I did tweak this so I can have purple shadows directly. Okay, perfect. So now we have our layer shadow and our layer flat already separated from the same source. Remember, this has 6 different layers. So now what do? I want to merge this. I want to overlay these shadowy things over onto this one. So what do? Let's unplug this, and then I'm going to be using a merge node. Merge. I can also use the shortcut M to directly create a merge. So now I'm going to cast a foreground with a background. So obviously my background is going to be my flat color. Okay, and then my foreground, the thing that I'm going to be placing over, it's going to be my shadow. And finally, I'm going to be connecting this onto the result of the viewer. And this is what I get. Now, why don't I see the operation going on? Because I need to tell this node to activate the operation, which in our case will be multiply. You see right here, it's got operation over. No, we want operation multiply. And then we're starting to see the effect of the shadow multiplying onto the flat color layer, and you can control the mix right here. So 0, 100%, and you can see the shadows right here, you can see the shadows right here. 0, 100%, 0, 100%. I think you get the idea now, right? Perfect. If you don't want the multiply effect, you can also use overlay or whatever suits your need. In my case, I really like to use multiply around 24% or so. I'm sorry, 34. 34%. I can see already the highlights, or probably maybe you will want some more prominent effect with her. Either way, you can create an entire series of network nodes working for your objective. For example, if I don't like this grading, I could just press G to get a graded node, which will in turn allow me to change the colors for her. Okay, so I'm going to be selecting my gray node. I'm going to be pressing 1. This way I can directly overview this, and then I'm going to be adding a contrast. I want this gray area to be more solid. So let me punch this in by using a gamma. I'm sorry, right there. Maybe using this. Okay, because I want really dark shadows. So then again, I'm going to select my merge, press 1 to return to your viewer, and of course, you're getting more prominent shadows here, even though this is only working at 0.7. Now 0.23, which is very low, but I think you get the general idea. Now this one is giving a gloomy or very darky or very nightly look. So however you want to do this, you can create that effect using the combined power of the EXR multi-layer system coming from Blender and giving and rendering out extra passes for isolating objects, or rather for tinting them directly into the compositor. So thank you very much for this session. This has been a long video, but I know you will take full advantage of it before jumping onto Blender 2.8, which is going to be releasing its solid version sometime around July, and I believe the best version of it will come around the end of the year, where UDIM's support are already announced. So thank you very much for watching this entire session of the video. I hope this will help you get moving on to creating special passes, and I will be releasing a pack of override materials so you can create directly from drag and drop or appending materials onto your scenes, such as the depth scene and many other interesting effects that you will directly get from the shaders. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the next video.